She was just a humble mom in a simple dress, until her billionaire husband walked in and revealed the truth that would leave the snobby elite speechless. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Sarah Wilson moved through her modest kitchen with practiced efficiency, preparing breakfast for her son Ethan before his school day. The small apartment wasn't much, but she'd made it cozy with handmade decorations and family photos. Her simple cotton dress had been mended twice, but it was clean and pressed. Appearances mattered to her, even if designer labels weren't in her budget. "Mom, are you coming to the fundraiser tonight?" Ethan asked, his 8-year-old face bright with hope as he munched on his toast. "Ms. Peterson said all parents should try to attend." Sarah hesitated, her hands pausing over the lunch she was packing. The Westfield Academy fundraiser was the social event of the season for the elite private school, a school Ethan attended only because of a scholarship program. The other mothers would be draped in designer clothing and jewelry worth more than Sarah's annual salary. "Of course I'll be there, sweetheart," she said, ruffling his hair affectionately. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." What Sarah didn't tell her son was how she'd been saving for weeks to buy a decent dress from the clearance rack, or how she'd practiced introducing herself in the mirror to avoid stammering when meeting the other parents. Some sacrifices and struggles were a mother's alone to bear. The Westfield Academy ballroom gleamed with crystal chandeliers and elaborate floral arrangements that probably cost more than Sarah's rent. She smoothed down her simple black dress, the nicest one she owned, and clutched her small purse as she entered the room filled with the city's elite. Mothers in designer gowns clustered in small groups, their laughter tinkling like the champagne glasses they held. Fathers in tailored suits discussed business deals and vacation homes. Sarah felt distinctly out of place, like a sparrow among peacocks. "I can do this," she whispered to herself. For Ethan. She made her way to the refreshment table, hoping to find a quiet moment to compose herself. The catering spread featured foods she couldn't pronounce, arranged so artfully it seemed a shame to disturb them. As she reached for a glass of water, she overheard a conversation from a nearby group of women. "Who is that?" asked a tall blonde woman with a diamond necklace that caught the light with every movement. "I don't believe I've seen her at any of the board meetings." "That's Sarah Wilson," replied another woman with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Her son got in on the scholarship program. My Brittany says the boy is bright. But clearly," she glanced toward Sarah and lowered her voice, though not enough, "clearly the family doesn't belong in our circle." Sarah felt her cheeks burn but kept her head high. She'd faced worse than catty remarks in her life. For Ethan's sake, she would endure this evening with dignity. Victoria Harrington, the self-appointed queen of the Westfield Parents Association, approached Sarah with 2 of her followers in tow. Victoria's red-soled shoes clicked on the marble floor as she advanced, her perfectly coiffed hair not moving despite the artificial laugh she released. "You must be Ethan's mother," Victoria said, eyeing Sarah's dress with a barely concealed smirk. "How nice that you could join us tonight. These events do require a certain contribution. I hope that wasn't a hardship for you?" Sarah straightened her shoulders. "Not at all. I believe in supporting my son's education in every way possible." Victoria raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "Indeed, though some support is more substantial than others. My husband donated the new science wing last year." "What is it that your husband does again?" The question hung in the air. Sarah knew this was a deliberate attempt to embarrass her. In the 3 years since Ethan had attended Westfield, she'd never mentioned a husband. "Actually," Sarah began, but Victoria cut her off. "Oh, I forgot," Victoria said with exaggerated sympathy that fooled no one. "You're doing this all on your own, aren't you? So brave. I simply cannot imagine having to work and raise a child without help. My personal shopper alone saves me so much time. The women with Victoria tittered behind their hands as Sarah felt the sting of their judgment. She'd faced prejudice before, but never so blatant, so cruel. I'm quite fortunate, Sarah replied, evenly. Ethan is a wonderful son. That's all the wealth I need. Victoria's eyes narrowed at Sarah's composure. Well, I suppose we all have different definitions of fortune. Speaking of which, have you seen the silent auction items? There's a weekend at the Four Seasons that starts at $5,000. Perhaps there's something more in your budget. I believe there's a gift card to that charming little diner on Fifth. The women laughed openly now, not bothering to hide their disdain. Just as Sarah was considering a dignified exit, the grand doors to the ballroom swung open. The crowd hushed as a man in an impeccably tailored suit entered. Tall, with distinguished salt-and-pepper hair and commanding presence, he caused a ripple of whispers to spread through the room. "Is that Alexander Reed?" someone gasped. "The Alexander! Reed? The tech billionaire?" Another voice confirmed. Victoria's eyes widened, her attention completely diverted from tormenting Sarah. "Ladies," she whispered urgently to her friends, "that's the founder of Reed Innovations. Forbes listed him as the third richest man in America last month. The donation possibilities—" She smoothed her dress and prepared to intercept him. But, to everyone's surprise, Alexander Reed scanned the room with purpose and strode directly toward their little group. Victoria stepped forward, hand extended. "Mr. Reed, what an unexpected pleasure. I'm Victoria Harrington, head of the Parents Association. We're absolutely thrilled that you—" But Alexander Reed walked past her outstretched hand without acknowledgement, his eyes fixed on Sarah. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. "Sorry I'm late, darling," he said warmly, leaning down to kiss Sarah's cheek. "The Tokyo meeting ran longer than expected." Sarah's face broke into a genuine smile as she looked up at Alexander. "You made it," she said softly, relief evident in her voice. Victoria's mouth hung open in shock. You two know each other?" she stammered, looking between Sarah and Alexander with uncomprehending eyes. Alexander turned to Victoria with a cool gaze. "Know each other? Sarah is my wife of 10 years. And you are—" The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria's face drained of color as she realized her grievous error. I'm Victoria Harrington," she managed. "I was just welcoming your wife to our little gathering." Alexander's expression made it clear he didn't believe her. "Interesting. I thought I heard something quite different as I was walking in." Sarah gently touched her husband's arm. "It's fine, Alex. Not everyone knows our story." Alexander nodded, his expression softening as he looked at his wife. "Sarah prefers to make her own way without using my name or resources. It's one of the countless reasons I fell in love with her. Her strength, her independence, her genuine nature in a world of pretense." He glanced meaningfully at Victoria. Victoria's friends had already begun to distance themselves from her, not wanting to be associated with someone who had insulted a billionaire's wife. "Perhaps," Alexander continued, addressing the now growing crowd around them, "we should remember that true worth isn't measured by the price tag on one's clothing or the size of one's donation. My wife has taught me that authentic character far outvalues any material possession." The atmosphere in the ballroom shifted dramatically. Parents who had previously ignored Sarah now approached with warm smiles and introductions. Victoria stood, frozen, her social standing crumbling before her eyes. "Sarah," Alexander said, loud enough for those nearby to hear, "shall we make our donation now? I believe you mentioned wanting to fund the new scholarship program for underprivileged students." Sarah nodded, her eyes bright with purpose. "Yes. Education changed my life, and I want other children to have the same opportunity Ethan has, regardless of their parents' financial situation." As they walked toward the donation table, whispers followed them, not of mockery, but of admiration. Sarah's simple dress no longer seemed out of place, but rather a statement of understated confidence. She didn't need designer labels to prove her worth. Her character spoke volumes. Victoria attempted to salvage her reputation by approaching them at the donation table. "Mrs. Reed," she said, her voice overly sweet, "I hope there are no hard feelings about our little misunderstanding earlier." Sarah regarded her with calm dignity. "No hard feelings, Victoria, but perhaps a lesson for us all about judging people by appearances." Victoria nodded stiffly, her smile frozen in place as she watched Alexander write a check with more zeros than her husband would make in a decade. As the evening drew to a close, Sarah and Alexander stood together, watching Ethan proudly show his science project to a group of impressed parents and students. "You could have told them who you were from the beginning," Alexander said quietly. "Saved yourself from their condescension." Sarah shook her head. "Then I wouldn't know who was genuinely kind and who was just interested in connections and status. Besides, I grew up with nothing, Alex. I'll never forget where I came from, and I don't want Ethan to either." Alexander squeezed her hand. "You're the most remarkable woman I've ever known. Letting our son attend on scholarship, driving that old Honda instead of the Bentley, working at that community center when you don't need to. Those things make me who I am," Sarah replied simply. "The money is yours. I fell in love with the man who slept on a futon in a garage while building. His first prototype, not the billionaire the world sees now." As they prepared to leave, Victoria approached one last time, this time with the school's principal in tow. "Mrs. Reed," the principal said enthusiastically, "we would be honored if you would consider joining our board of directors. Your perspective would be invaluable." Sarah smiled, understanding the opportunity before her. Not for social climbing, but for real change. "I'd be delighted on one condition, that we expand the scholarship program to include more students from diverse backgrounds." Of course," the principal agreed readily. As they walked away, Alexander whispered, "Planning to shake things up around here?" Sarah's eyes twinkled with determination. "Someone needs to remind them that character and kindness matter more than designer labels and bank accounts." "That's my girl," Alexander said proudly, as they gathered their son and headed for the exit, leaving behind a room forever changed by the woman in the simple black dress, who turned out to be the richest of them all, not in money, but in spirit.